Instagram. Happy Wednesday to you guys. This is the third in our session of IELTS masterclasses, and again today I am going to be joined by Omid from Saint IELTS. So we're just waiting for him to join. Now today we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're really going to dive into IELTS speaking part 1. So just in case you're not sure, although I think you probably are, the IELTS speaking exam has got 3 sections. And in part 1, the examiner asks you some quite fairly straightforward, simple questions about you and your life and, things like this. So it's not particularly challenging in part 1. However, a lot of IELTS candidates have some real problems with part 1 of the speaking exam, and today IELTS Omid is going to share his experience of part 1, and then we're going to do a little bit of practice so that you guys can see how you can tackle this part of the speaking exam. Hello, Omid.
Hello, how are you?
How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good.
How's your day?
Sorry?
How was your day?
Busy, but it's a lovely day today. It's nice and warm and sunny, so that's good.
Here is warm, but not nice. About
Uh,
52 degrees Celsius.
52 degrees.
Yes.
Here it's probably about 25 or 26.
That's our winter's weather.
Yeah, different culture, different climate.
Oh.
So, Omid, IELTS speaking part 1. Now, you've taken the IELTS exam a couple of times, I think. What was it like for you doing part 1 of that exam?
About part 1, the most important thing that comes to mind, maybe every candidate would notice that somehow, is that since it's the first part and it's the first interaction with the examiner, so the tension, the pressure at that moment is at the most level, the top level. So the concept of stress management would mean a lot for that part. If a candidate can manage that part 1 well, he or she will probably go smoothly through the exam. So it's the beginning of the interview, and it's really important. And part 1 is that part that will give the examiner the first impression about about the candidate. So if a candidate act poorly in that part, it may cause negative effects on his or her results. So it's not the hardest part. The hardest part, I believe, is the part 2, but it's the most strategic part, I would say. Part 1 is the most strategic part because it's all about the stress management, about giving a good impression to the examiner. So, yeah.
What's your understanding of the purpose of part 1 of the speaking test?
I think the purpose of putting that part 1 was twofold. First of all, to give the examiner an overview of the candidate's status, an overview of the candidate's score level, an overview about how the examiner should manage the test, because the rest of the test, questions that are proposed in the IELTS test are not isolated questions. They are related to one another. They are built on one another. So the question number 3 is dependent on question number 2 somehow, maybe not so vividly, but it's kind of related. And the person who decides what question to ask is the examiner. And part 1, I believe, is one purpose of putting part 1 was to provide the examiner an opportunity to plan the course of test, the entire test. And second of all, the second reason is for the candidate to provide him or her with a kind of introduction to help them get relaxed, get comfortable with the environment. It starts slowly, it starts smoothly. It's not the most challenging part in terms of linguistics and the sophistication of questions, but that's why candidates should use the part to get relaxed, to find themselves in the environment and join the environment.
Exactly that. So the part 1 of the speaking test, just like you say, it's actually there to help you. It's there to help you as the candidate to get used to the examiner, get used to the room, just kind of calm down a little bit. And it is not the time in the exam for worrying about using advanced grammar and advanced vocabulary. That comes later on in the exam.
Yes. And here comes,
sorry. No, go ahead.
And here comes the, most candidates think that should they use complicated structures in part 1, should they give long answers? They think that that's the most important thing. You can focus on for this life, because students may have a misunderstanding of the purpose of part 1, and they think maybe they should provide the examiner with long answers and just ruin their test.
Yeah, exactly that. So the answers to the questions in part 1 should actually be really short.
Yeah.
And they should also be really simple. And they should also be natural, and they should be fluent. So, my biggest tip for people who are preparing for IELTS and are worried about part 1 is to just keep it really, really, really simple. Just answer the question. The first thing that comes into your head is going to be fine as an answer. You don't need anything complicated. And in terms of length of answer for part 1, now I know what I would teach to a student. What would you say is a good length of answer for part 1?
To be honest with you, I have no idea still. I don't know. I have a tendency to give long answers, I don't know. I'm not a good person to give any advice in terms of the length of answers.
So the problem is that, yeah, carry on.
I think it's about 1 minute all in all, or 2 minutes in total for part 1, I suppose, if I'm not wrong. But for each answer, how long it should be, I have no idea. I have no standard for myself.
So the examiners get given a list of questions. They have to ask you all of the questions on the list. They have about 4 minutes for part one. So if you, as the candidate, make your answers too long, the examiner is going to have to start to interrupt you because they must move through every question in the time frame.
Yeah.
So you talked about making a good impression. If you answer too long and the examiner has to interrupt you constantly, okay, that's not on the marking criteria, but it's going to start to get a little bit irritating from their perspective because they're probably thinking, I've only got 2 minutes left and I've got 6 questions. You need to stop talking. So my tip really for IELTS Part 1 is to listen very carefully to the question, answer the question. So just give a really short, simple answer. Give one short reason and then stop and smile and look at the examiner and let them get on with asking you the next question. And I think people think, well, I can't do that. It's my speaking exam. I've got to talk and talk. And people then don't know how to stop. And that becomes a huge problem, I think.
I've had the experience of being interrupted by the examiner 2 times because I've taken IELTS 2 times, and in each of them, the examiner had to interrupt me because I was talking too much, probably irrelevant.
Exactly. So what we thought we'd do today is do a little bit of role play. So Ahmed is actually going to ask me some part 1 questions and I'm going to answer them, just 2 or 3. And then we're going to have a chat and then we're going to swap over and I will ask Ahmed some part 1 style questions and we'll just see what happens. So Ahmed, you should have a couple of questions ready to ask me.
Yes, I have it in front of me. Which instrument do you like listening to most, and why?
I like listening to the piano most. This is because when I was a child, I had piano lessons, so it's an instrument that's very close to my heart.
Perfect. Have you ever learned to play a musical instrument? Which one?
Well, as I said, when I was a kid, I had piano lessons. I also learned to play the trumpet for a little bit, but to be honest, that wasn't really my favorite thing. I much preferred the piano.
Fantastic. That's it.
So
that was amazing.
With how long were my answers on it? Were they long and waffly or were they very short and focused?
They're very precise. They're perfect.
Yeah, really, really precise. So I just answered and gave one reason and then I smiled. And the smile is really important. People sometimes think, oh, it's an exam. I can't smile.
Yeah.
But actually, when you smile, there's 2 reasons to do it. Number 1 is because it shows the examiner, yeah, I'm finished, I'm ready. Number 2, when you smile, you actually make yourself relax.
Yes.
So it's a really, really good thing to do in your exam. Okay,
And
Ahmed, I'm going to ask.
I'm sorry. I've just thought about something. One disadvantage of providing long answers, is that when the examiner interrupts the candidate, even if that would not officially affect the score, that interruption would convey the feeling of the negative feeling, to the candidate himself or herself. And this may affect their performance. So even it's not anything official or any direct cause to this, but that frequent interruption may give me as a candidate the feeling that I'm doing wrong. I'm not providing a good answer, and this may affect my speaking in the test.
Yeah,
So
exactly that. exactly that, because it's not very pleasant to be interrupted all the time. And if the examiner has to interrupt you a lot, that's going to start to make the candidate think, well, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with what am I doing wrong? And it triggers that kind of doubt and anxiety, which is absolutely not what you want going into IELTS speaking part 2, where things get a little bit more challenging, really.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ovid, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and then we'll have a little chat about your answers. So,
Okay.
where do you work?
I work at home. Is it good?
So that's your answer to the question. I work at home. But now you just need a little bit more information about that. So maybe just one more sentence to back up that I work at home.
Okay. Let's try it again. I work at home because as a web developer, I don't need to be at the workplace all the time. So mostly I work at home.
Perfect. That's really good. So 2 bits of information there. And why did you choose this job, Omid?
Because of my academic background as an engineer, telecommunication engineer, and my interest for web development.
And is this a popular job in your country?
Yes and no. It's getting popular in the world, not only in my country, because it pays good and it's not that labor intensive.
That's okay. So that's a really good answer for part 1 question. Just those 2 bits of information, simple answer to the question, and then a little bit more info about it. If you are looking for a higher band score and you want to take this one step further, there's a little pronunciation trick that you can do at the end of your question. Omid, could you ask me one more question? It can be a repeat of one of the ones you've already won.
Sure. Do you think children should learn to play a musical instrument at school? Why? Why not?
I definitely think children should learn to play an instrument at school because it's a really great way of helping their brains to develop, and it has a positive effect on all their other studies. So what happened to my intonation as I ended my answer?
It was like a mountain.
And so at the
You
end of the
climbed
answer,
to the climax and
yeah,
you descend to the end of the
exactly.
answer.
So in English, certainly in British English at any rate, when we want to show that we are finished speaking, our voice goes down. And so if you're aiming for a slightly higher band score and you want to kind of play with this and play with your pronunciation, that is a really good thing to work into the ends of your answers. Just to make it super clear to the examiner, yeah, I'm absolutely finished. You can ask me your next question.
How easy would it be to learn to play an instrument without a teacher? Why?
Well, I think it would be very difficult to learn to play an instrument well without a teacher, mostly because instruments are very complicated and we need help and support along the way.
Perfect.
So, Omid, do you have any tips for people how they could practice IELTS speaking part 1?
Recording their voice would be the most important tip and the most effective one. I know it's challenging. Nobody likes their voice. So, but you as a candidate need to come out of your comfort zone and try new things, challenge yourself, record your voice, listen to your voice. You will find, you will learn great things about your speaking. Uh, from a personal experience, when I record myself, there are points at which I get shocked because when I'm speaking, I think that I've pronounced it that part very well, but when I listen back to my voice, I notice that that specific part, which that I thought I've done really good job at, that was the exact mm, down part of my speaking. So, and the opposite can be true. There may be some parts that you think you are doing poorly when you are speaking, talking, recording your voice. But when you get back, you listen back to your voice, you may realize that, that part is actually the great part of my speaking. So that will help to manage to learn your, you know, your voice is like an instrument, which we've been talking about. You need to learn how to play with your voice, your tongue, so just it needs listening, talking, practicing. Yeah.
Definitely. The voice recordings are a fantastic way of checking what your speaking is like, because it's very hard to be objective about it in the moment. And so a voice recording provides you with a mirror, and it shows you much more clearly where your strong points and your weak points are.
Yes.
And my tip for anyone who's practicing for IELTS speaking and wants to work on their Part 1 answers, there are probably hundreds of millions, or maybe not quite that many, but there are a lot of Part 1 answers on the internet. So find them, print them, and practice answering them every single day. If possible, get a study buddy, pair up, whether that's on Zoom or in person, and practice and practice and practice until you can answer them without thinking and without worrying. I think that is so important. I honestly don't think people do enough speaking practice.
I think another option would be joining the speaking club of yours. That club I find really helpful. It's 3 sessions a week. It's really organized, a friendly environment. So no matter what the level of you as a student is, you can always feel free to join the club, and it provides you with a friendly environment to chat, to find your mistakes, your not only mistakes but your power, kind of. So it's all about positivity.
Positivity, absolutely. Positivity, practice, positivity, and my speaking club is a great place to get together with other English students, but fundamentally it is practice, 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 practice. In China they have a saying: if you practice something 10,000 times, you will master it. And I think it's the same in speaking. If you practiced your IELTS Part 1 questions 10,000 times, they would no longer be a problem, because you would have practiced enough.
That was my strategy for the reading part, and that worked well. I practiced the same reading tests maybe, say, 30 times each, and the result was good, kind of. It was 8.5.
Yeah.
So
8.5 in reading is well, I've never got a 9, so you can basically do IELTS reading at the same level as me, which is amazing. That is fantastic. So I think we've covered quite a lot of information on IELTS speaking part 1. Anybody who is watching this either live or afterwards, any comments, any questions about IELTS speaking part 1, please put them in the comment section below. I'm very happy to come and answer them. The link for my speaking club is in my bio, so the Think Positive English bio. Omid has a great Instagram page called Safe IELTS, which again I strongly recommend that you would check out. He's got loads of tips from that kind of insider perspective, which is really useful for students. And if there's anything that you'd like us to talk about in these videos, again, put it in the comments and we'll definitely see what we can do.
Sure. And we are always here to answer students' questions.
Yeah, it's a tough exam, but you don't be doing it on your own.
Sure, exactly.
Cool. All right. Always enjoy the rest of today.
You too.
And I will see you tomorrow.